Hi guys, welcome back to the next lesson on our course, and in this lesson we are continuing with the chapter of percentages, and we're looking at critical thought processes out of percentages that apply across chapters. So the next one which we are discussing in this one, and I've already shown you two uses of the PCG, the percentage change graphic. One use was the product change use, and the second use was the product constancy use, and we have used both of these extensively, both for questions as well as getting the product constancy table in place. So in this lesson I want to take you through the third use of the PCG, which you need to understand, and that's the PCG's third use is the successive percentage change use of the PCG. The successive percentage change use of the PCG. And structurally, the successive percentage change use of the PCG is very structurally very similar to the product change use, with just one small variance. Let's understand what this uses before we start understanding what the variance is. So let's say you have a situation where let's take an actual question-based situation. Let's say a shopkeeper successively gives or marks up his goods by 20%, 30% markup will always be an increase, and 50%, and then gives a discount of 10% to a customer. So the question is, what is the percentage profit to the shopkeeper? So in this situation, what you can do is you can think of the original cost as 100, and because he is marking up 3 times successively, you can think of the first markup on the first arrow, the second markup on the second arrow, and the third markup on this third arrow, and then think of the discount on the fourth arrow, because essentially what is happening is that this number, the original cost of 100, is going through successive percentage changes. So what will happen in this case is, if I use 20, 30, 50 and 10% drop in that order, the price of the product that the shopkeeper is marking will keep increasing one after the other. So a 20% increase on 100 makes it 120. A 30% increase on 120 makes it 156. A 50% increase on 156 makes it plus 78. That's half of 156. So that makes it 234. And the 10% discount then, which will give you minus 23.4, will make it 210.6. So the shopkeeper, because his original cost was 100 and his final cost is 210.6, the percentage profit of the shopkeeper is 110.6%. So this is this question is a profit and loss question actually, and that I've just done, and we'll see questions like this again in the profit and loss chapter. But since I'm right now teaching you PCG and the success percentage change of the PCG, you can understand this structure or this question as a standard structure of thinking for situations where you take one number and change it successively. You take one number and increase it successively, or decrease it, increase and decrease it successively, to get the chain of numbers that happens leading up to the final number. Now, as I said, as you realize, or you should realize, that if I had taken a product A into B into C into D and increased by 20%, increased by 30%, decreased by, C is here, increasing by 50%, increased by 50% and decreased by 10%. And I wanted to know what is the percentage change in the product. As you can imagine, the same structure exactly will play out. The same structure exactly will play out. So essentially, structurally, thought process wise, the successive percentage change use of the PCG, the successive percentage change use of the PCG is the same as the product change use of the PCG. There's only one small difference. That difference is that in the product change use, we have seen that the arrows are interchangeable with respect to each other. So 2010 is as good as 1020. But in successive percentage change use of the PCG, sometimes what happens is that in the chain of values you're getting, in some of these questions, the intermediate numbers will be important. So if you play with the arrows and change ABC percent change to BCA or any other such structure, what will happen is that the value here will not be the correct one for the intermediate value. So in a successive percentage change situation, if you just want the starting and the final value, it's fine. You can change the arrows as you want. But in case when the starting and the final values are not the only ones you want, you also want the interim values, this will not work well. So for example, suppose I tell you that the population of a town goes up by 20% in the first year, comes down by 10% in the second year, and goes up by 5% in the third year. And I want to trace out what's happening to the population. So the population after 1 year will become 120 with a 20% increase. The population in the second year after 2 years will become 108. And the population after the third year with a 5% increase. 5 basically means 1 by 20, which in this case will be 5.4. Your final population is 113.4. So if you just ask this question, what is the percentage change in the population over 3 years, then you can see the answer as 13.4. But if an intermediate value is going to be important, for example, there are two ways in which it could be important. I could ask you this question, what is the percentage change in the population after 2 years? What is the percentage change in the population after 2 years? If that is asked of you, then if you had played with the arrows to make this 10% used on the last arrow, if you had played with the arrows in this form, 120, a 5% drop, 5% increase, so 126, and then a 10% drop to 113.4, the final value does not make a difference, it's the same. But if you are now perceiving that after 2 years the population has gone up by 26%, this is clearly wrong, because after 2 years we know that the correct value of population after 2 years is 108. So if you play with the arrows, you cannot trust these values as the actual values in those situations. And if the question is built on a intermediate value, then you will go wrong if you do not if you do not keep the arrows constant as they are, right? So that's the only difference in this. Of course, as I said again, I'm repeating, if you just want the last value, you have no obligation to keep the arrows same. You can keep the arrows as you want in whatever order which is convenient for your calculations. But when you want the intermediate values, and very typically for population questions, you will need intermediate values. For example, if I take this question, that the population of a town goes up by 20%, comes down by 10%, and goes up by 5% in 3 years. So your thought, I know that, or I would expect as a question setter, that you should be able to execute this thought, 120, 108, and 113.4. You will be able to execute this. And then if the question says that instead of going through percentage change questions, the question says that the population after 2 years was found to be 10,800. What is the original population? So you can use unitary method here. 108 is 10,800. So 100 will be what? If you solve this, you will get the value of 100 as 10,000. And that's the answer. And this question, if you had played with the arrows to make the second year value to be 126, as I showed you in the previous discussion, a couple of minutes ago in this discussion, if you had got these numbers in this form, and you started trying to equate this 126 to this 10,800, this would be wrong, because this 5% increase arrow should not be here. The second arrow is a 10% decrease. So that's the only difference between successive percentage change and product constancy. In successive percentage change, the arrows are not interchangeable. So coming up on the other side, we've already seen a couple of questions now. The population question, the markup, successive markup, and the successive and the discount, successive markup and discount question we have seen. So we'll be seeing more questions on the other side in the next lesson, which will use the successive percentage change use of the PCG, right? For the time being, I want you to also look at the assignments and the questions loaded up along with this lesson, and practice that, and I'll come back to you on the other side in the next lesson. Bye for now.